evening, everybody. Rev.David again, coming to you on YouTube. Starting a new series of messages for the holiday season. I'm going to call this series the "'Tis the Season Sermons." That's kind of clever, ain't it? Well, we had wrapped up our series on witchcraft. Now we're going to get into dealing with the Christmas season. And as I shared with the church last week, a sermon on an old Christmas movie called A Christmas Carol. Y'all are probably familiar with the story with Ebenezer Scrooge. Well, the scene I wanted to focus on was the scene with Ebenezer's visit from his former partner, Jacob Marley. And everybody who's been around any length of time at all, you will have watched that movie and are familiar with exactly what I'm talking about. We find that Ebenezer Scrooge was a very, very greedy, selfish, miserly kind of a person. Some of you may know some folks just like that. At some given point in time in your life, everybody has been a little miserly and a little greedy and a little self-absorbed, so we can't slap people or judge them for their shortcomings. Everybody has been there, and everybody has done that. But in this particular season, it is very dangerous for us as Christians to engage in that kind of behavior. So much so that it will start to affect your joy and the joy of everyone around you. We find this to be the case in this particular story with Ebenezer. Jacob Marley had passed away, and that was Ebenezer's business partner, as I said, and they were into merchandise and various different business agreements and things where they dealt with money and of course goods and things of that nature. And as he had passed away, Ebenezer left him by himself running the business. Well, as Ebenezer one Christmas Eve comes home from his business and is preparing himself for bed, he starts to notice some paranormal, some supernatural activity taking place in his home. And before you know it, he is staring at the ghost, if you will, or the specter of his former business partner, Jacob Marley. Now, ordinarily, that wouldn't be a particular shock to some folks, but it kind of caught Ebenezer off guard. Not so much the visit as is what was said from Jacob Marley to Ebenezer during their encounter. And that is what I thought as I was watching this movie, as I always do during this holiday season, that struck me enough to where I ministered on this last Sunday. And I'm just going to share some of that with you tonight. And maybe and hopefully it'll bless your soul as it did the majority of the people in congregation last week. Jacob Marley had came into Ebenezer's room, and of course Ebenezer was in disbelief. He didn't believe that this spirit had came to see him. He was in his same miserly, arrogant attitude. So much so as he started saying, "By humbug." That's where the old saying comes from, if you never knew that. It comes from this particular story. Well, as Jacob Marley is talking with Ebenezer, Ebenezer asks him, he says, "Who are you?" He said, "In life, I was your partner, Jacob Marley." Ebenezer says, can you sit down? And he says, "I can." He says, "We'll do it then." So Jacob Marley sits down, and he is beginning to conversate with Ebenezer. They're having a back and forth. And Ebenezer asks him, he says, "Why do spirits walk the earth?" He says, "Well, it is required of every man that the spirit within him should walk abroad among his fellow man. And if that spirit does not so in life, it is condemned to do so after death." And that was the first point of interest to me. It stuck out to me as I was watching it. The spirit in you walking abroad. In other words, this is a message, especially for us Christians, that the spirit within us, we cannot be so selfish. We need to be more selfless. When you say, "How so, preacher?" I said, well, we need to, especially during this holiday season, during the Christmas season of giving and joy, we need to let the God that lives in us be seen. Our spirit needs to walk abroad. It needs to interact with your fellow man and share in this joyous time. Too much time we get wrapped up in our own selves, get wrapped up in our house, our jobs, our business, without even worrying about the next man, worrying about the next household, the next family. It's all about us, or me. And that is exactly what Jacob Marley was trying to tell Ebenezer. His condemnation was that he never did that in life. He was a selfish person. As the conversation further ensued, he said, "You're chained." He said, yes, I am." He said, "I wear the chain that I forged in life." He said, "Is its pattern strange to you?" He said, "Or would you know the weight and the length of the strong coil you bear yourself?" And Ebenezer said, I see no chain." He said, "Mine was invisible too until the day of my death." That was the second thing that stuck out to me in this little encounter. And so what kind of chain are we forging on our own lives every day? We can't see it. But every act of indifference, and every act of selfishness, and every act of Scroogey behavior, if you will, adds another link in that chain. Gives you something you're going to answer for one day. We are going to answer for passing by the Salvation Army bell ringer with indifference. We're going to answer for not giving the homeless man a piece of bread. We're going to answer for that. You and I both, from the pulpit to the door, are going to give an account to God one day for our selfishness. As this conversation went on, he said, "You have labored on your chain, Ebenezer." He said, "Yours was as full and as heavy as this 7 Christmas Eves ago. You have labored on it since. It is a thunderous chain." In other words, day by day, as we go through life, we're working on that chain. Every time that you act selfishly, we don't share our Christmas spirit, we don't let the spirit within us walk abroad and concern ourselves with the well-being of everybody else, we're forging this chain. I encourage you today, brothers and sisters, to break that chain. The Bible says the anointing can break every yoke of bondage. You don't know the joy in blessing somebody else. When you do something that does not directly benefit you, but benefits another soul on this earth, you don't know What that, even small blessings, how that can make the difference between people's lives. And I thought that to be quite interesting, quite telling in this particular conversation. Ebenezer said, I feel sorry for you, Jacob. Is there anything I can do? He said, no. For me, nay. He said, my spirit never walked beyond our counting house. It never left the narrow limits of our money-changing hole. Ebenezer said, no doubt of that, Jacob. You were always a good man of business. He said, business. Mankind was my business. Benevolence, the common welfare, forbearance, patience, they were all my business. The dealings of my trade were but a drop of water in the comprehensive ocean that is my business. Once again, proving that we get self-consumed. And what we ought to be worried about this Christmas season is not the gifts and not the parties. And remember that, hey, it's not your birthday. This is Jesus' birthday. And what we ought to do is be more like him. Start blessing other people outside the four walls of your own counting house. If you truly want to celebrate Christmas the way it should be done, we should do things the way Jesus would have wanted them done and glorify him. If you want to give somebody a gift this season, why don't you give one to him? And start doing things the way he would like them to be done. This was definitely a warning for Ebenezer and a warning for all of us Christians, all of us people. Start worrying about people other than yourself, than your own house, your own kids. All that's well and good to take that into consideration. But there are people, I promise you, brothers and sisters, this morning, wherever you're watching, that are so much more less fortunate than you have been. And we need to act that way. God has blessed us abundantly. And that's all there is to it. And finally, he said, I've come for your sake, that you can escape my fate. He said, you'll be haunted by three spirits. Expect one when the clock strikes one when the bell tolls two, and the third shall appear in his own good time. And we know from the story that was the ghost of Christmas past, present, and future. I want you to consider that, and that's the last thing I'll leave with you tonight. Consider your Christmases past. Nothing you can do about those. Those are gone. But they've had an impact on who you are. They've made who you are. Your whole idea about this season that we're in is shaped and molded by the Christmases of the past. Maybe some of you haven't had very good memories from Christmas. Maybe some of you have. There's nothing we can do about it, be it good or bad. But there is something you can do about Christmas present. You can change your attitude right now for the better. And what you do today, this Christmas, will affect tomorrow and will affect Christmases to come. Anyway, God keep you and bless you. We love you in the Lord. It won't go, if you record past 15 minutes, it won't upload. How many minutes was that? Did you stop it?
I tried. Does it stop?